The fuck was that? Did you hear that?
Welcome, listeners, to the Blokes podcast.
Did you hear that?
I did hear that. The
This is now
meeting is being recorded.
They must have put that on Zoom because they had some cheeky people in meetings, like just cheekily pressing record, and like someone just going hard on the boss who isn't there in a Zoom meeting, and they use it as blackmail. You reckon?
I don't know. I'm just going to.
They would have to. It'd be a real cheeky record. That's what they'd be doing it for, so people would know the other end.
Yeah. Well, welcome, listeners.
Yeah, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast.
Feels like we've had a break, Rhino.
Yeah, we'll probably release this and it won't seem like we've had a break, but we have had a bit of a break from recording, haven't we?
It's been a few weeks. I was away for a couple of weeks and it just happened organically. It wasn't a conscious sort of thing, but I'm excited. It's nice to be sitting down chatting with you again.
It is. I'm loving the greenery in the background there, mate. It's beautiful.
It's all the shrubbery.
And how was your time away up north?
Wonderful. So we're meant to be away for 10 days and ended up being away for just over 2 weeks because we didn't want to fly back into lockdown. But we ended up flying into lockdown anyway. But it was good. You know those holidays where you're ready to come home?
Yeah, yep.
Like I was ready to come home.
Yep.
So it's just work's been flat out, and that's something that we could probably chat about today. I'm a bit tickled pink. I'm a bit positively thrilled, one may say.
Are you bringing the idioms back with tickled pink?
Kinda, a little bit.
Yeah, that would make sense if you were if you were tickled enough, you laugh and everything, and then you go a bit red in the face. Do you reckon that's where it comes from?
It depends on your skin tone and colour, I suppose, doesn't it? It's quite true. A racist remark.
Yeah, I'm thinking about a pig, like tickling a pig, because pigs are pink. I don't know why. It's just a visual I'm getting. Hang on.
I had a.
Yeah, but So if you're tickled pink about, what you're about to talk about it after we get through this, but if you're tickled pink, it's like I'm really, excited and I'm happy and, about something. If I get tickled to the point where I turn pink, I'm not having a good time.
Well, this is something I was going to say. My earliest memory of being tickled was, it's 9 a.m. on a Friday morning, listeners. Strap yourself in for this one. So my earliest memory of being tickled was by one of my dad's friends, and me and my sister nicknamed him Mr. Tickle because he would tickle us so hard. And it was traumatic. It was like I was three years old. This dude was, and he got a real kick out of making us really uncomfortable. Yeah, I've done the work on that. It's okay.
I have as well. I had an uncle who would do the same, and he would tickle me, and because when you tickle a kid, you get like a positive response back, what you think's a positive response, because they're laughing. It's like, we'll just tickle them, but like there's a point when the tickle becomes like you feel very out of control as a kid, and it's actually a loss of control of our body. And I've done the work as well, and we kind of joke about now, like if Mel starts to tickle me a little bit, I'll start to pretend, I'm like, Uncle Colin, stop it.
I'll get triggered.
Yeah.
I'll regress. I'm 3 years old again.
So I didn't have a very positive association with being tickled, same as you.
Well, let's not be tickled pink then. Let's just be...
But I love that saying. That's one that I've also got an association with that saying. My dad would used to say that, and that was something excited was brewing.
I'm tickled pink.
What are you tickled pink about, Nick?
Well, and I want your thoughts on this as well. I've been doing a lot of work over the last 18 months to 2 years about mental health education. What is mental health? Talking about it, and you and I both have in the same context as physical health and whatnot. And I'm starting to see people coming to see me because they understand they got mental health and they want to actually get it in shape. They're not coming to me because there's problems necessarily. They understand their problems are a byproduct of not doing certain things. And people are wanting to actually start investing in their mental health. So many people are skipping mental health care plans and going down that route and coming directly to us now. Um, and I had someone finish a 12-week program, and we've got the maintenance program. He said, "Yeah, of course I'm going to do the maintenance program because I've got a gym membership. Why
Mm.
wouldn't I continue working on my mental health?" And I was like, "Yes,
Yeah.
go, you good thing."
Yeah.
Started tickling myself till I became pink.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's fantastic to hear that, and I think I've been seeing the same thing. Yeah, it's people are now being more proactive and they're seeing it as an investment, which is so important. I was reading something only the other day, and I've seen it many times over the years. It's probably a meme or something, but you can complain about the cost of going to see a therapist or keeping your mental health in shape or getting a coach for this stuff, but what's the cost of being in the exact same place in 1 year's time?
Yeah.
You
What's the
know,
cost of not doing the work?
exactly. And I think that's a great way to look at it. And I've seen, yes, people are more aware and proactive. And I've also seen people have been coming to me, probably, I'd say the last 3 years, who are instead of waiting, if you imagine we're getting our car serviced, right? And there's, it's due for a service and we need to go in and get a few things checked, but it's still running well. Whereas with our mental health, people would pull that thing into the mechanics and all the wheels are falling off, the windows are smashed, there's the headlights are smashed, and it's an absolute mess. So I would see people, in the depths of drug addiction, been stuck in mental illness for years and years and tried everything else and then come as a last resort. Whereas I've been seeing people now who, and it makes me tickled pink as well, who are saying, "Look, I don't have a massive problem at the minute, but I'm starting to use these drugs recreationally, and my relationship to them is a way that I know if I keep going down this path, I can kind of see where I'm going to end up." So let's say if
Mm.
that path is, 10 is the end of that path, which is complete. My life's a complete fucking mess, last resort, wanting to commit suicide, blah, blah, blah. They might be 2 of those 10 steps down the road and they're coming
Yeah.
in to get help at that point. And that's just, it's
They're
so good.
coming in before it's critical mass.
Yes.
And I was curious to learn from you what's going on, because you and I work in same field but sort of different places. And yeah, so that's really cool that people are sort of, all right, I'm starting to use, it was recreational, now it's becoming a little bit more. It's like having a beer, once or twice a week, and all of a sudden it creeps up to 3 or 4 times a
Yep.
week. I guess it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, yeah. So congratulations, everybody. Well done, everyone out
Yeah.
there who's jumping on the, oh I've got to look after this and put some time and effort and energy and money into it too.
Yeah.
It's,
And I think you're right that there's a kind of a critical mass that happens where even people that may have not looked at it or embraced it, or maybe they haven't themselves or anyone they directly know, really been by their side through some mental health issues or an addiction or whatever it is. Even they're starting to understand now that people need to be proactive. Mental health's an actual thing,
mm,
because I would get in the trap, years ago, where you'd be around people a lot of the time who share those views, and so you'd start to think that that's how the rest of society felt. And so,
yeah.
I'd all of a sudden think, oh, people now understand addiction, blah, blah, blah. And I remember this one time I had an old friend and he was a wonderful man who used to go to my gym, and he invited me to do a talk he was part of the Rotary Club.
Mhm.
Because I'd love for you to come. We have once a month a guest speaker. I'd love to have you along and, do a talk about your story and all that kind of jazz. And so obviously we're talking a bunch of old dudes here, right?
Mm,
And I remember
mm.
doing that talk and I'm like, oh no, they don't get it at all.
Nah,
It was
not
like
not the
I
demographic.
was talking double Dutch, right?
Yeah,
But even now, I'm seeing that even people of that generation are
yeah.
starting to understand a lot more, because obviously it's been, a lot more, and this isn't the right thing, but we tend to look up to sports players and that like there's some sort of authority. But like it's actually good that a lot of these sporting players are coming out and discussing their mental health, because it's making people go, oh, this must be a real
Well,
thing.
they are the role models, actors, sports people, anyone who has influence and some time in the spotlight. Yeah, it's good that those people are starting to use that time in the spotlight to create a positive ripple effect through society.
Because, and talk about positive ripple effect through society, the more people that treat their mental and emotional health as an investment, as something to be proactive about and something to keep on top of, think about the ripple effect of that 5 years, 10 years, 20
Mm.
years into the future. I think it's just it's an amazing thing.
Yeah, totally. It's and S.N. Goenka said we can't have peace on earth until we have peace within ourselves. So it all starts as on an individual level, and all of that collectively creates that society shift. So if we all start doing our own little parts, then all of a sudden, you know, the neighborhood starts getting a bit happier.
Yeah, because it's kind of like as a society, if you think of our collective as like a single person, it's like they've gotten to their kind of rock bottom. It's like we've gotten to this point where the current systems in place haven't been working. You know, X amount of people are killing themselves every single day, like a massive amount every minute someone's killing themselves.
Hmm.
Even though we're in this amazingly advanced society. So it's like as a society, we kind of hit rock bottom. And I think now we're starting to take the steps to pull ourselves out. But it starts, like you said, with the individual taking ownership of their own mental health, because it's not just the one person. It's like that one person that comes in to see you, Nick, and says, hey, I want to treat this like a gym membership and I want to stay on top of my mental and emotional health. Yes, it's great for them, but it also has a ripple effect to their immediate family, then their extended family. Because when you're around
Their
someone who's on
friendship
top of this stuff,
circles.
yeah, when you're around someone, they don't have to tell you, hey, you should do this or should do that. They're just around someone whose energy is in a better place and it has an
Mm.
effect on them. And then they'll say, hey, what are you doing? Well,
Yeah.
I go to Myndfit and treat that when I go there once a month or once every couple of weeks, whatever it is, and I stay on top of this stuff. Then that
Yeah.
person says, I might do that too.
I went there and did 12 weeks worth of work and got my head in shape and started thinking a lot healthier. And now I'm just going back there just to stay on top of things. Oh, that makes sense. Oh, yeah. Okay.
A lot of people say, like, what do you go there for? There's nothing wrong with you. It's like, yeah, no, there's nothing wrong with me, but there doesn't have to be anything wrong with me to want to stay on top of this stuff.
It's the yeah, and that's what I guess what we're saying is a little bit more proactiveness. You know, our programs, initial programs are reactive programs, and the maintenance program is a proactive program. So it's um, yeah, it's great when people are just don't chew the chair. Little American Staffy chewing the chair.
Classic.
Classic Staffy. Classic. Yeah, yeah. It's just I'm just really proud of all the people that are sort of getting their head around it. And, you know, I had a bloke in yesterday, a big tradie dude, and he's like, yeah, I never talk to anyone about this stuff. And I'm like, okay, well, just, you know, and there's this narrative that I'm not very good at speaking. I'm not good at talking. And they actually are when you give them the space to do it
Yep.
and a little bit of guidance. And this dude, just once he got going, I had to pull the brakes off and I'm like, all right, you've done a great job. Thanks for thanks for talking. So I'm
That's
just
it.
really proud of all these people, men and women, but really blokes especially that are starting to get out there and do their thing.
Yeah, you're right. When people feel safe, they love talking about it. You know, it's just
Yeah,
I've had that so many times before. It's like, oh, I'm not good at talking, and then half an hour goes by and they haven't stopped, and I'm like, you did all right there.
yeah. I think you can change that belief now.
Yeah,
Let's alter that belief now.
yeah.
So yeah, so that's exciting.
It's kind of human nature, isn't it, though? If it's not, we've done it with, physical health and stuff in the past. It's like, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'll wait till something goes wrong before I go and get it looked at. It's like it's a bit
Yeah,
human nature.
yeah. Yeah, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Or there's a look after things and they last.
Yeah,
So that's let's do that one instead.
let's do that one instead.
Yeah, so Queensland was great because it was a good time to step out of work and reassess, what we're doing at Mindfit and look at things a bit objectively. And so we're changing things up again. We're going to introduce some online stuff. But the exciting thing is we're planning a 12-month trip around Australia.
Wow.
So we're yeah, and in 2023, I think we're going to pack up the doggos, chuck them in a camper, and spend 12 months driving around Australia doing mental health education talks.
The Mindfit Winnebago
Myndfit World Tour
Australia tour.
in Australia. Well, it's
That's like the World Series.
World Series.
That's so true.
Because we're the world champions. But are you?
Are you?
Did you play any
What other
other
countries did you play?
So we're gonna get some sponsorship for that. Gonna start looking at that. That's gonna be a couple of year project to get that up and running. But we're trying to get a lot of other sort of people on board to help with that and promote it. And
what do? You like stop in a lot of these sort of smaller towns and everything along the way, and awesome.
So we'll map out a route, and we'll touch base with all the local councils, and just sort of hit one little town, but try and get people from surrounding towns to come in as well.
Yep.
And hopefully it gains a bit of momentum, with a bit of exposure and whatnot. So,
mate, that sounds unreal.
Yeah, I just want to plant some seeds, just get out there and. Because a lot of people just don't know that this stuff exists, So let's take it out there and start putting it out there, and also the Blokes podcast. Let's spread that around out there a bit more as well, because getting a lot of great feedback about how beneficial people find this to listen to. So
I'll just bring one up. I think I sent it to you, Nico, the other day.
Oh yeah.
Let me just bring.
That was weird. I'll tell you a story about that.
All right. Well, we just got a
days.
Yeah, just someone on the wonderful Instagram, shared one of our episodes and just said, everyone out there, have a bit of a listen. Oh, this podcast is amazing for all of my divine masculine followers. I'd classify us as the divine masculine.
We're not her followers, though.
I just sort of said, I just
stop making it about you, man. Stop wanting to be divine.
My ego wants to be divine. The divine Ryan. And then I just sort of said, thank you for sharing that. And she said, your podcast has changed my husband's life, really, with an exclamation mark. I'm forever grateful, sending you lots of love. So that's just beautiful. I love getting messages like that.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, when you sent that through, I was on the Sunshine Coast, staying at a friend's house, and I looked at the lady who posted. I looked at her profile just to see what she did, who was following her, and there was all these synchronicities. So she was from Melbourne. She was living like a suburb away from where I was at the time I was reading it. She was using these angel cards, which my partner Emma and her friends were all using at that exact time as well. Like there was just so many synchronicities going on. It was hilarious. So I actually messaged her and said, "Well, this is what's going on."
I love when that happens.
Yeah, it was very cool.
That's unreal. So that'd be great. You could take Woke Blokes on the road. I'll have to hold up the fort. I don't even know where I'll be in 2023, to be honest. I could be fucking anywhere.
Yep. So that's exciting. So we've got a 12-week online program that you're going to help me to get up and running and going. So that's just for people to do when they can't make it in, or if they just want to dip their toe in this a bit. We've got some things in the pipe works, and it's good.
That's beautiful, mate. It's good when you have those kind of little breaks or holidays, and it's interesting how when you kind of physically distance yourself from something, you actually kind of gain a better perspective. It's like you've drawn your consciousness up from the minutiae of life and work and everything.
What?
Yeah, that's right. I used the word minutiae.
You did. And you were actually looking at me to see what my reaction would be. I'm going to drop minutiae on him right now.
I was saying, if I get no response or response to minutiae, I got a big one. But you do. You gather this more objective kind of look, and you can sit back and kind of look at your life. And I think that's one of the reasons. Well, I've had those kind of breaks as well, where you get this objective look at life and work, and you go, "Hey, I want to keep doing A, B, and C. I want to pull back on A, B, and C," and then you kind of get excited about coming back and putting it all into action.
Yeah, well, it's like anything, It's good to take a healthy break from it, as we've rattled on in the past. And healthy relationships take a break, see what comes up. But you can't see the forest for the trees. So whether it's your own personal relationship, or even with kids, or with work, it's nice just to step out of it for a bit, and because we get swept away in it. And I was trying a lot of things, like we're trying to do this online meditation and and all this sort of stuff, and it wasn't gaining traction, or it wasn't getting off the ground. So I think we've found a way to sort of, yeah, put it all together, and just streamline it all, and just make it much easier for everyone. So
Yeah.
it was really nice to gain that clarity, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. It's like we get caught up in momentum. It's like we're kind of just that big rock rolling down the hill in all these
Mm,
areas of our life, and we don't take a break from that, and we just it's momentum, 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 and then we might be whether we're doing something that we want to change, or maybe someone who even is in a career they don't want to be in, or a relationship they need to change, or something like that. And then all of a sudden, because we're in this momentum and we never stop, then all of a sudden, a week, a month, a year, 3 years, just all of a sudden goes by, and we're like, oh fuck, well, I never stopped and had a look. And we're in an age now where we're constantly stimulated, so there's never really, we don't get like a few hours in the day where we're sitting in the savannah, waiting to hunt food and thinking about our life. We never have that. We've always got that fucking phone that we can look at, or TV, or whatever it is, and so we don't have breaks as much as we need
that's why
to.
doing those mindless tasks around the house are so important. Doing the dishes, mowing the lawn, all these mindless activities are really important, because it gives us that mental break. And it just, I have my best ideas in the shower,
Yeah,
because it's just a mindless activity, and it opens your mind up, and it starts flowing again. And a couple of examples of what you're talking about. I had a client who's 25, and he's like, I wish I had have done my apprenticeship when I was 17. I got to 21, and then I was like, oh, I would have been finished it by now. And then, but he got caught up in what he was doing, and then he got to 25. He's like, shit, I still haven't started an apprenticeship yet. And he's like, I could have done it, when I was 17. And so there's all this regret that sort of comes with not stopping and stepping out of it. I've got this amazing client in the UK at the moment, and his business is going through, or the company he works for is going through a change, and they're firing everyone and then rehiring. And it's working class Britain, blue collar, and this guy is part of the union, and the union is going to take this company to court, and they're going to have their day in court because it's not fair how they've been treated and all this sort of stuff. And he said he got his notice, and they've got 11 weeks to go. But he's been drinking more, he's been a bit angry. And I'm like, why are you still there? Why, he's talking about he's found all these other potential jobs, and even maybe going to do some landscaping, that'd be cool. I'm like, well, why there? He's like, yeah, there's this weird sense of duty, this sense of, oh, we're all in it together, this mob pack mentality. And it's like, oh, fuck, I'm meant to be going to the picket line to protest at 11 today. I'm like, do you want to? He's like, not really. I'm like, well, you don't have to. You don't owe anybody anything, You don't have to do things that make you uncomfortable. He's like, oh, but what about, my mates, what do they say about me? And I'm like, oh, I must be loved and liked. Hello, little
hello
toxic
there.
belief going. He's like, oh, fuck. And he's got this weird sense of duty, and how am I going to look after my family? So that he's living in this constant state of anxiety, instead of just leaning into this sense of trust, and letting go. And just, I said, this parallel universe is a version of you that exists 11 weeks from now. And he's taken the hard path, and left that job. And because they've got their day in court, but they may or may not get compensated. It's an unknown. And like I said, you could focus all your time and energy into doing something healthy, or you could stay in this toxic sort of relationship, and there's going to be a version that pops out at the end of this 11 weeks. What are you going to do? And so it's he's just gotten swept away in it.
Yep. Yeah, no,
And it
that's just,
wasn't until we had that session yesterday where he's like, "Fuck, thank you for bringing me out of it, so I can actually look at it objectively."
yep. Yeah, I actually had a similar conversation with a client this week who was, yeah, in a role. It wasn't their main job, but they're working a couple of days a week in this other job, and they know they're like, it's not, good for me, and it's kind of like, all right, well, why are we? why are we still there? And so we explored them going in and saying that they're quitting, and just saying, well, what's coming up when we're playing this out? And it's this obligation and
A sense of duty
and
is,
and
I have
and
to.
yeah, and fear and guilt. So it's like fear,
Yeah,
guilt, and this sense of obligation. And I said, all right, well,
I
let's
can't.
yeah. So I said, let's explore that. And I said, I'm not gonna make a decision for you and tell you what to do, but let's see if we can start to remove this obligation, fear, and guilt, so you can make a decision from a more balanced and objective place. And
Mm.
all sorts of stuff started coming up around, well, I feel like I'm doing something wrong, and I'm like, well, who's someone that does something wrong? Not me. I'm like, oh, so you do nothing wrong. And we're really
Mm.
unpacking this, and it came back to um, they didn't feel safe to put themselves above other people. So always putting other people first. So like staying in a role, even though they knew it wasn't bad for them. This was a pattern throughout their
Yep.
life. And we started, really breaking this down. And it came down to some of the things that you were saying then. It was this being able to trust themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and also being able to trust that everything will be okay if they choose themselves. Because if you play it out, it sounds so funny and irrational, but if you play out that everyone needs to like me, blah blah blah, put other people first, it's really a fear of, if I do put myself first, then eventually no one will want to be around me and I'll die alone. And people are terribly afraid of just dying alone and old. And so it's like,
Mm.
we play that out, and that's kind of where it ends up. And so at the end, it was, build trusting, feeling a lot more safer to choose himself, finding instances in the past where they had chosen themselves, and even though it caused them massive anxiety and everything, and they felt obliged, everything worked out okay. So kind of challenging that belief. And so, very similar theme, it sounds.
And we're speaking about you go when as soon as you have a choice, there's anxiety. Because it's like, oh, but what if I make the wrong decision, or what if all the what ifs come into play, and the imagination just goes, hey, my time to shine, and runs off into all these different rabbit holes. And so we're talking about just bringing it all back and just living in that sense of trust, as said, and taking the hard path. It takes more strength to let go than it takes to hold on. It takes um, this deep inner strength to stand up for yourself and for your family instead of just going along with the pack. And it takes a lot of strength to break away from that pack, especially blokes you've been working with for 20 years. So I said to him as well, I wasn't trying to guide him down one path or the other, but I just wanted him to make an informed decision based from a grounded, empowered position instead of a heightened, anxious driven decision. So yeah, we'll see where he ends up. But it was also interesting in that chat we spoke about tolerance, and I think we were chatting about this. I think there's two different types of tolerance. There's in the Vipassana meditation, we sit there and we learn to tolerate discomfort and not just mindlessly react to it. Tolerate babies crying when you're a new parent, and also we build tolerance to these things. But I think people build tolerance to toxicity as well, which becomes really unhealthy. And so I could, the old adage of change occurs when the discomfort of staying where you are becomes greater than the discomfort involved in moving. So imagine you're in a pot of water, like a cauldron. A witch doctor's grabbed you,
Witch's
and
cauldron.
and the fire's under it, and it's warm. And you're like, oh, this is nice.
Eye of Newt in there with you.
And I reckon there's two types of people. There's a type of person, and so there's this cauldron, and on the ground all around it is broken glass, right? So I reckon there's two types of people. One is sort of able to identify that the temperature is increasing in this. This is going to get to a certain point where it becomes intolerable or unbearable. So I'm going to have to, at some stage, get out and walk across this broken glass. I'm going to do that now because it's going to be the lesser of two evils eventually. So instead of putting myself through unnecessary suffering and sitting in this boiling water, I'm going to get out and just rip the band-aid off and get across and move on with my life. I reckon that's the minority, though. I reckon that's like probably 20% of the population who do that. The majority are just content to sit in there and sit in there and sit in there, and they'll justify, no, it's fine, I like hot water. No, no, it actually feels good. Yeah, no, all my mates are doing it. Yeah, I should be doing it too.
The witch told me they loved me once.
Yeah, and then finally their skin starts falling off because they're melting, and then they jump out mindlessly, reactively, and then run across the glass and the whole way across. So it's just this massive amount of suffering, which is unnecessary.
And they also hate the witch and blame
Yeah,
them
it's
for
the witch's fault.
all of the skin peeling off and everything. Yeah, it's like when we start to teach people about really having compassion for all other human beings and understanding that, when most human beings are mindlessly playing out their programming and traumas and automatic reactions, so you can really
Everyone's doing the
understand
best they
another.
can.
Yeah, exactly. And then
Yeah.
people tend to then go, oh, well, I'll just let everyone, walk over me then and never change anything. It's like, no, no, no.
Set your
You've
boundaries. Set your
taken the ball and
boundaries.
you've run to another field.
You're on
It's
the
like
other end of the spectrum now.
you can get out of that pot and still have compassion for the witch and go, she's a witch and she's making this boiling cauldron. This is what she does.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna get out of the pot and walk away. But I'm not gonna hate the witch. I can do that from a place of compassion. Those things
This
can
is where
coexist.
Yeah, but this is where, and I love doing work with people about developing more understanding, and we say that understanding is a cornerstone for love, and so love and compassion for all humans and creatures. So it's the remember the scorpion trying to get across the river,
Scorpion and the frog.
and
Yep.
yeah, and the frog, and it's just the scorpion's nature. Yeah, and so it's the witch's nature. If we can understand the nature of things, even and first and foremost ourselves. So I was chatting to a client yesterday and I said, I learned to love myself by understanding that I was allowed to not like parts of me. I was allowed to not like some of my habits and some of my tendencies, some of my nature. Um, but underneath it, I still loved myself, entirely. I don't beat myself up. I just sort of go, oh, I understand because of my programming and all that sort of stuff. This is my nature. Uh, if I don't like it, then I just sort of observe it and go, right, how do I begin to start to modify or change this because it's not working for me anymore. It's not aligned with who I want to be or whatever the case may be. So it's so much easier to create change when we embrace it instead of holding it at bay and going, oh, it's terrible, it's horrible.
Yeah, this is when we kind of think about Jung, it's like this is when we start to create shadows and we're like, this is a part of myself that I don't like. Let me just push it over here somewhere so I don't,
Hmm.
because I don't want to see it, right?
Yeah.
So then that part doesn't feel acknowledged because all parts of us want to feel acknowledged. They're like children. And then it needs expression somewhere. And if we keep pushing it away, it'll come to the surface in some form or another, generally in these destructive patterns, because we're not like, hey, I see you. I acknowledge
Hmm.
you. And then we can
Hmm.
try the way we change is we integrate that part. We don't banish it, forever.
I had so many clients when I was sort of mainly doing hypnotherapy, and they came to me for anxiety and to help to stop feeling anxious. And I kept asking them if anxiety was a human and it was sitting next to you, what would you do? And they're like, oh, I'd stab it with a trident, or I'd chop its head off, or I'd burn it, or blow it up, or all of these really
Stab
harsh
it with a
things.
trident.
Yeah, a lady said that. A lady said that one day. I
A
think she'd
great
been watching
description.
Anchorman.
So, yeah. Or she was into like Greek mythology or something.
um, and I was like, okay, so this anxiety is a part of you, and it's actually a really healthy. It's an important part of you. Yeah. So as soon as you have an aversion to it, and you don't like it, and you want to cause harm to it, you're instantly in this instant state of in a conflict where you're not going to be at peace. You're not going to be happy, but all you want is to be happy. So explaining it to them in that way, and they're like, "Oh, like, what do you reckon you need to do with your anxiety?" I don't know. I'm like, Let's give it a medal. It's done an amazing job. My anxiety prevented me from leaving the house, and kept me safe. What a thank you. Here's a medal, but I don't need you anymore.
Mm.
So we can work with it and start letting go of everything that was creating all that anxiety to begin with.
I love that. Yeah, it's a reframing of the feeling of anxiety itself. I do a very similar thing with clients. I sort of have them, I said, so if you have a bit of anxiety, there's a part of you that's scared and perceives threat. So I said, imagine that there's a little kid, and it ends up being a little them. But I'm like, imagine there's a little kid, and they just maybe tap you on the side or just tug your shirt just a little bit because they're like,
Mm.
hey, I think there's a threat here. There's something to be
Hmm.
scared about, so be on alert. And what we're doing is we're telling that little kid, fuck off, and not pushing them on the ground and telling them to go away. But they still perceive threat. So they come back and they tug a little bit harder at the shirt. And we do it again. We're like, fuck off, leave me alone. And eventually they're kind of slapping you in the face, trying to get your attention because you've kept not acknowledging them. So this is where anxiety, when you turn towards it and embrace it and acknowledge it, instead of when it's a 2 out of 10, but people don't and they push it away and then it goes 3, 4, 5, 6, and then it goes up to 8, 9, and people start having panic attacks because they haven't acknowledged this part of them that's trying to let them know they perceive threat somewhere. And perceived threat because there's no actual threat really,
Yeah,
but
they're not
there's
actually
some
being
sort of
hurt. They're just imagining that the worst case scenario and the fear. So that's their mind in heavily distorted. We call that. And yeah, so what you're talking about there, from our perspective, is that there's suffering. There's a bit of general anxiety. That's healthy. That's normal. That's needed. That's necessary. Okay, but then it becomes unnecessary and escalates to 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 when you start using those distortions where
yeah,
you jump to conclusion, worst case scenario, taking it personally, blaming
yeah.
other people, whatever.
Someone
So
asked me recently. They reached out on Instagram and they wanted to talk because they knew I had a history of lots of anxiety and that kind of thing. And I've actually heard this more than once, but this particular person, I remember the conversation, and they just wanted to know. They're like, so I just want to know you've healed your anxiety 100% kind of thing. And I'm like, no. Know that something's gone forever, but I say, look, my anxiety might be 1/10. I don't know how to quantify it of what it was, but here's something I know for sure. Yes, I still get anxious from time to time, but my anxiety never stops me from doing something I want to do. Whereas in
mm,
the past, my anxiety used to stop me all the time from doing things that I want to do. And it would escalate from lower level to mid and high. And I would pull out of an event. I would, stop, what I was doing. I wouldn't go and play footy. I wouldn't go for this job or take this test because my anxiety would be making the decisions for me. Whereas now I can still feel very anxious if I'm going to give a talk in front of a bunch of people for whatever reason, but it will never stop me doing it because I acknowledge it and go, I get it. This is why you're anxious. Come here, little
yeah,
Ryan, and give me a hug. Let's go and do it anyway.
we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
That's an awesome way of putting it. Just listening to you, I was thinking our way of if someone reached out to me and said, "Have you got rid of your anxiety 100%?" My take on that now is just to educate them and explain to them, that anxiety is on the normal human spectrum, and so no, I don't want to get rid of my anxiety 100% because then I'm missing a crucial part of me. But what I've done is I've trained myself and learned to have an emotional response that's in proportion to what I'm experiencing. So if Nick's going to do a presentation and he gets some butterflies or a bit of tingling, he's like, oh, that's a really healthy
Yeah.
response to have because you're getting out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And so what our nature, once again, this is where we go into with understanding we can love ourselves. Our nature is to go, don't get out of your comfort zone. Don't go out there. It's safe staying here. And anxiety is like that bodyguard and wraps his arms around us. I've got you, buddy. I'll keep you safe. And you're
We're
like,
not going to go
hey,
anywhere. It's okay.
I'm like, I love that you're doing that. I love that you got my back. But you know what? I've got this. So I'm going to stay in the driver's seat and I'm going to acknowledge you and thank you and appreciate you. But I'm going to keep going and doing my thing.
It's like I'm thinking now, if you think like anxiety is, it's an offshoot of the core emotion of fear, which is one of
Yeah.
the most primal emotions that any animal has. And then it's like, have you gotten rid of your fear response completely? And it's like,
Yeah.
no, I fucking need that thing. Because imagine if like, someone in the dark alley is coming at you with a knife, or you're crossing the road with your headphones and a car's about to run and beeps you, and then fear mobilizes you and makes you act faster than you can think. It's like, I really want that in the moment. I don't want to go, oh, a car's approaching at 80 kilometers an hour. I guess I better get moving. Splat.
Or this murder in the alley, like, oh, would you like a cup of tea? Would you like to come and have a chat about?
Put the knife down, sir. Let's have a cup of tea. Give us your fucking money.
It's it's great when we can reframe it and put it in a context that people can interpret and understand. And so when you take the drama out of it and reduce that narrative that everyone's got going on in their head about it, and you simplify it and just make it like a little puppy dog, all of a sudden they're like, oh, okay, I can engage with that now. I can talk to it. I can get it and understand it.
Yeah, because we're in relationship to everything. And so it's like, well, you're in relationship to your partner, your friends, your family. Yeah, but it's like you're in relationship to your thoughts and your emotional states as well. And people just tend to really identify with, there's no space, the thoughts and emotions. So they're too close to them. So it's all sort of melded into one. The I, the self, is melded in with these thoughts and emotions. But as soon as we start to put a little bit of distance between, I'm actually in relationship and can interact with this feeling of anxiety or this thought that I'm not good enough. And then we can start.
Well, that's where you're getting swept away again. You get swept away in there. I am afraid, and you buy into what that anxiety is selling you. Where if you can, what we teach is get into that space between stimulus and response. So if the stimulus is internal in the form of a thought or a feeling, identifying and going, oh, I'm not my thought, I'm not my feeling. I don't have to buy into this. My actions don't have to be driven by this. That's a bit of anxiety. Oh, keep going, off you go. It's just going to pass you by.
Yep.
And no reaction is still a reaction. So it's just that separation is really important.
Yeah, that separation, that witness becomes a bit of a circuit breaker, because if we don't have that witness, then we have the feeling and the thought, and they both feed off each other in like a circular motion. So it's like, I feel afraid, then my mind finds what I'm afraid of and says, yep, you're afraid of that. Feeling thought, and it just gets worse and worse. Whereas if I put the witness, pull back.
But what we're doing in that is, we've got that destructive rust that we get stuck on the neurological pathway, and we're bouncing between distortion and disturbance. So it's not fair. I'm getting angry. He's a prick, so we're labeling. I deepen that anger. Oh God, and we jump to a conclusion. He's going to come and bash me. Then I get scared, anxious. So we're just constantly bouncing and
between
deepening
distortion and disturbance. So we copping the two Ds there, are we? No wonder that's
double
uncomfortable.
Ds, man. Yeah, we got some Samantha Fox going on. To double D's in the house.
Oh God.
Was DX. DX is in the house.
DX. One thing I was going to say, there's actually two things that we've probably moved on a bit, but I think I'll dial it back a bit.
I'm sure. Back around.
I'm sure it's. I've brought this up on the podcast before, but I think it's a wonderful example of understanding someone, but then also not just saying, just because I understand, then I can accept that behavior. Because this is where people get, like I said, this is where people get caught up. We get too black and white with this. Michael Singer, who I bang on about a bit, but he used to do talks at prisons, every fortnight for years, maximum security prison, like hardened criminals. And he said, and he would just teach them these spiritual principles that he'd learned in his life. And people would volunteer, they'd come, these hardened criminals. And one of them, he said, who was, he said it was a well-known, serial killer at the time, who was obviously serving multiple life sentences in prison. And after the talk, this fella came up to Singer, and he's obviously this pretty intimidating kind of guy. He just said, you know why I come here every fortnight? He says, why? He goes, because you're the only person who gets me. And he goes, what do you mean? He goes, you understand that the only time I've ever felt alive in my life was when I was planning to and then killing someone. And the rest of my life, I have felt dead inside and that I don't want to be here. And you get me. And so Michael Singer says, okay, because we understand that person, does that mean we just let people kill other people? It's like, no, we don't. Like, you should be put in prison for killing people, but we're not going to move forward as a society if we don't understand someone's behavior and where it comes from. Because then we can start to look at why do people end up in that situation where they feel the need to kill? Because most people just say that's a bad person, they're evil, we'll lock them away and forget about them. But we don't evolve. We don't kind of, stop that happening with other people in the future if we don't understand that person.
Hmm. We call that looking beyond the projection. So someone, hurt people hurt people. So someone's toxic, whether it's just in an argument at home or whatever. Um, and so if we can stay in that space and stay separate from it and not get caught up in their story and their narrative or what they've got going, and we can look beyond that and go, all right, this person's actually in suffering. This person probably needs to be asked, hey, is everything okay? What can we do for you? But we can also set those boundaries, which is what I think you're talking about. Is like, and I need you to know that the way you're talking to me isn't okay. So let's take some time and let's come back around to this later, or there's something that you can do. But setting the boundaries is really important.
Yeah, and you can set boundaries without the
The
reactivity.
attack.
Yeah, that's right. Because it's like, I get attacked and I can set a boundary from a place of compassion and we diffuse. But if I then attack back, it's just energy's bouncing
Yeah.
back and forward, and who knows where that ends up.
Well, the whole house burns down when you fight fire with fire.
That's right.
Um, Interesting. Yesterday with a client that they were talking about someone, we're discussing this look beyond what they're projecting, and we figured out that this person felt really guilty and that they were dealing with, and they kept having arguments. And okay, let's park it and let's look beyond what they're projecting and where's all this coming from. And so the anger was the emotion that was on display, but that actually was coming from an anxiety, which was coming from a guilt. So it was this
Mm.
triple layered um,
Cake.
thing in play, and it was really cool because this person hadn't done something they said they were going to do, and so they felt really guilty. And so the best form of defense is attack. So that's where they get really anxious that they're going to be called out or whatever. That's the shame and guilt and embarrassment. So they started attacking my client verbally. And I was like, "That's wonderful! What a wonderful example!" And they're like, "Oh my God, how do you see that?" And you're like, "Well, you've got to maintain some objectivity."
Yeah, when you're objective, you can kind of peel it back. Yeah, I love that. That's a wonderful example. The anger, 'cause that's why always with clients, I just tell them, look, anger is a secondary emotion. What's underneath it?
Totally.
The
Well, in this
anger.
one, it was a third emotion.
It was, yeah, it was a try
It was
try.
a triple cheeseburger.
It's the top layer of a triple cheeseburger.
But I love, so we talk about suffering at Myndfit. We've got anger, guilt, depression, and anxiety, and it's really important to. I don't know. I don't think they're feelings. I think they're more moods, or
I would,
there's some way we identify it.
I would
So bear
say,
with me.
yeah, go.
So I think anger is more usually frustrated. Yeah, we're just feeling disempowered. We're feeling. I don't think anger is the actual feeling that it begins at. I think it's a frustration is probably a form of anger. Guilt is more like shame or embarrassment. Depression is more hopeless or stuck, and anxiety is just that fight, flight, living in fear sort of response. So I think they're sort of more umbrellas for those, probably more applicable feelings.
Hmm.
What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I would say anger and guilt, I would see as probably a core emotion or feeling, and then I would say depression and anxiety are states. Are
Yeah,
states.
I was totally calling them states yesterday too. Yeah,
Yeah.
when we get in a depressive state, we're in an anxious state. Interesting as well. We did a reframe for a client yesterday because they'll say, "My anxiety always takes over. My anxiety always takes over." Okay. I said, let's reframe that into, "I feel afraid at times." And they're like, huh? And I said, what about "I feel afraid at times"? Because it doesn't always take over. Anxiety is not always in the driver's seat. It may feel that way, but it's not literal. So what literally happens is there are moments or occasions where you feel afraid. And then sit with that for a sec. How's that? Like, yeah, that's true. Yeah. And I'm like, guess what? I feel afraid at times too. Oh, and everyone feels afraid at times, and we need to feel afraid at times. It's not a bad thing.
Mm.
Oh, so it's funny how many people are having aversions to these unpleasant feelings and then compounding them and making them worse.
Yeah, especially when that real black and white language, isn't it? It always takes over. Well, you'd
Yeah,
always have massive anxiety all the time.
yeah.
You know, what about when you're sleeping? No, I haven't got it then. Well, okay, that statement's false then.
But it's good because it gets people in a position where they can, yeah, reframe it and free themselves to out of that bondage.
Yeah, I had a client the other week who I actually used anger to get him out of an immobilized state or a submissive state. So it
Yeah.
was we're talking about conflict, and a lot of people, I've had this myself, but a lot of people I work with have all sorts of trouble with conflict, as in they
Hmm.
fear it. And
Mm.
we were sort of diving deep into that, and went back and yeah, makes sense. He was like a school kid in primary school and was in a different country where the rules were a bit harsher, and he missed class one day, and the next day the teacher beat him and his two friends in front of the whole class, like physically
Mm.
as well as
Hmm.
verbally. This was his first real experience with conflict, and I'm like, wow, what
Hmm.
an imprint that is. And so in that moment, when you're a kid and you're with a grown man beating you, and there's no place for you to be angry, you have to be submissive.
Hmm.
And so, and in a fear state. And so, that's why whenever he anticipates conflict in his life today, he gets massive fear and starts shutting down, submissive. And so
Reverts.
he reverts. He never sets boundaries. He'll try, and even if he knows he's right, he'll like let the other person win so he doesn't have to have the conflict.
Try and placate them. Yeah.
Yeah. So we went through and dealt with the submissiveness and fear. And then we got angry. Um, with the idea that we then went from anger, so got very angry at this, man that had done this when he was younger, which
Mm.
he should, because right now he's this big, strong dude, the guy I'm working with. Well, you could beat the shit out of that guy. So he actually envisioned yelling at him and, pushing him out of the room and everything. So he went from this submissive and fear to this anger. And then instead of staying in anger, we then went to a place of empowerment. And I think
Mm.
empowerment is when we really start to integrate anger, because anger is very powerful. It's a very mobilized state. And so we went from it was like this different three-layered cheeseburger, from submissive and fear to anger, then to empowered. Means, hey, I can stand on my own 2 feet, and I can display what my needs are in my life today without the fear of being attacked by this giant man, which is what happened when he was a kid.
Interesting one. That's cool. It's just making me think of a client I had earlier in the week, and he um, felt very disempowered in a certain situation, and thought, oh no, I'm over it, I'm over it. And I'm like, okay, close your eyes and imagine this person walks into a room or onto a job site, and what's your instant reaction? How dare you? Fuck you! So anger. So I think we've got some work to do with this.
Yeah,
And
still might be a
and I said,
charge there.
I said, I said to her, I want you just to imagine saying to this person, I forgive you, and I just wish you all the best. And I want you to feel how that resonates with you. And he said, "Yep, no, I don't believe it." And I'm like, "Cool, all right." And then I said, "Let's go into some compassion and empathy, and let's imagine this bloke laying in bed at night, and let's push everything he's done to the side. How do you think he would be feeling in those moments of solitude and quiet time?" And he's like, I don't know. I said, "Do you think he would be feeling guilty? Do you think he would be feeling ashamed? Do you think he would be a bit embarrassed about what he's done?" He's like, "No." I'm like, "No, lean into it. Do you think, like, this is a human being? He's in suffering. This is the hurt people hurt people. What's going on with him? He's laying there at night. Do you think he can sleep well, knowing that he's affected so many people in a negative way?" He's like, "Yeah, probably not." I'm like, okay, so let's now go back and say, "I genuinely wish you all the best." And his eyes popped open. He's like, "I can't believe how genuine that actually felt." He goes, "I can't believe." He's like, "I just want to give the bloke a hug now." And he's like, "It
That's
still
awesome.
sucks what he did, but I get that he didn't actually mean to do it." Blah blah. It was a wonderful, just that liberation,
That's
just
so
in
cool. I
in the
love that.
moment.
And that's key, isn't it? It's like, it still sucks what he did. And it's okay for you to
Yeah,
for it to
that's
suck. But it's like we try and get the understanding of the human underneath, and then the behaviors over here instead of
Well,
having.
otherwise you're still connected to it. You're still attached to it, and as you keep saying, it's going to play out in some way. And so you've still given this bloke the key to your happiness, even though consciously you convince yourself that, nah, it's all fine, I'm over it. Deep down, subconsciously, there's still some part of you shaking his little fist, going,
Yeah.
"Argh."
What you described then just triggered my memory. I used to do this with clients, and I should do it again because I think it is a wonderful practice. And I would, yeah, use the metta prayer. I just found it on my phone, which is of as Buddhist, and I would have that with clients. So the metta prayer says, "May all beings be free. May all beings be peaceful. May all beings be happy. May all beings be safe. May all beings awaken to the light of their true nature. May all beings be free." And yeah, I would start with someone like that they actually loved. It's like say it to your dog, or like say it to your mum or dad, or someone that you love. And it's so easy. It feels really nice. It's like, yes, I
Yeah.
want that being to awaken to the true light of their nature and be free. And then it's like you start moving out to like co-workers or acquaintances, and you kind of and then all of a sudden you start to get to the people they have this real charge with. And I remember, yeah, I had this client, and he was this lovely bloke, but he had these two people who he'd had business relationships separately in the past who'd kind of fucked him over, and one of them real bad. And yeah, we would get to these two. He'd be so good with them, and then I'm like, now this person, say it to them. And he fucking, one of them, he could say it, but he was like gritting his teeth when he said it. The other one, yeah, he'd start that first line and go, nah, fuck him. And then we'd start to, yeah, try unpack like you did with this client. Because like you see where that compassion runs dry and the emotional charge takes over.
But that meta prayer, we need to apply it to ourselves first and foremost. So,
Yes, yes,
you
yes.
know,
That's a good point. Yeah.
your client and my client, they weren't emotionally free. And, we talk about in Myndfit, the work we're doing is at the crossroads or the intersection of freedom and knowledge. And so we can have all this knowledge, we can have the meta prayer and everything, but if we're not emotionally free to authentically and genuinely communicate and express it, then it's not going to be effective. So many people think they're free, but you check under the bonnet and you're like, oh no,
Yeah.
still a bit going on there.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right. Yeah, I think I would get them to try and say it for themselves as well. A lot of people would have quite an emotional reaction to saying it for themselves as well,
Oh, it's uncomfortable.
they weren't free.
Yeah,
And it's like I
yeah.
want this for myself, but I haven't been able to get this for myself up until this point. And that's why I think a lot of
So
people have an emotional reaction.
yeah, and I keep talking about um, having a liberated mind, having a free mind. It's not just your mind, but it's and I use the word bondage, but in a literal sense, your mind is bound up. You are trapped. You're in a prison, whatever way you want to describe it. So until we're free on all of those levels within ourselves, then from all of those things in the past, all those threads are cut with compassion and empathy until we can look back and go, you know what, you harmed me, but that's your nature, and you harmed that version of me. You didn't actually harm me. You harmed a version of
Mm,
me, and that was your jam at the time. And but you know what, I'm okay, and so I'm now forgiving you and accepting what you did. Still, it's still not okay that you do that to people, but I'm good. I'm okay. And you know what? I wish you well. I hope that you find your way back.
yeah. To your
And
true
that's when
nature.
that's when you're truly free. Is when you can look at someone who has caused you harm and you can start rooting for them. You can
Yes.
start
Yes.
barracking for them. Come on, man, come back to us, because you've got so much value to add. You're using your mind for evil at the moment, but it's a powerful mind. Come and use it for good, and come back to us.
Yeah. I love that even if it's someone like I haven't spoken to in fucking God knows how long. Then I see whether I've just seen it on like maybe social media or they've done a post, and I can just see they've kind of turned it around and everything, or they've
Mm,
done something, and I like it brings a tear to my eye. I'm just like,
mm.
fuck yeah. Like
Come on,
I
man.
love seeing that shit. I just
So if you're listening, driving in your car, or whatever, think about someone who has done you wrong, someone who has unconsciously or mindlessly or even consciously caused you harm, and just bring them to mind, bring their picture to mind, and just start wishing them well, and see what happens within you. See how that transpires on a deep level.
Yeah, watch what happens inside. That's so interesting. I just had this memory just come up then, and from like 10 years ago, and it's so funny because we're in this world now, and we're talking about, we know like so bloody clearly how powerful our mind and everything is over our reality. And maybe someone's listening who it's all very, very new to them. And I just had this memory of when it was all very new to me, and I just sort of found out about personal development and that whole scene. And you can read books about the mind and everything. And the first ever book I read was Think and Grow Rich, which is, it's a personal development book. And in there, there's like, they talk about, affirmations and how you can say things and, your mind. And I remember I wrote some out for myself, and I was still like, it was new. I'm like, oh, I don't know if my mind has anything to do with my reality, like just so, unaware. And then I had a friend, and she was interested as well. And I'm like, oh, we'll make some for you, some affirmations. And I had these little index cards, and I'm like, let's write out some that I can't remember what the process was, but it was unique to that person. And I remember one of the lines, and you're obviously meant to read them out aloud. And one of the lines was, I know who I am. I'm amazing, and I don't care what other people think. And for this friend of mine, that was very contrary, which I found out to her programming, because she really did care what people think. And I remember she sat there, and I gave it to her, and she went to say it out aloud, and she just literally couldn't get the words out, and then just broke down crying in front of me. And it was so new to me. I was like, holy shit. Like this, because it didn't make sense to me why you couldn't read something out on a bit of paper, but she physically couldn't read it out and had this massive reaction. I remember in that moment, I just tweaked. I'm like, holy crap, this thing up here is pretty powerful. Did
you tell her to stop crying?
No. Can't you just read the fucking words? Stop crying. No, I wasn't. I didn't. No. I was I can't remember what I said, but it would have been,
You were woke enough to allow her to experience.
I was woke enough to say, let's just not read that card out for now. But
I think that the wishing someone well, and that was a great example. So she's got one of those three amigos that I must be loved and liked. I'm a people pleaser. Yep. So it creates really small parameters. So when anything happens outside the parameters, she gets triggered. You can't wish someone well if you have that belief, because it's going to create the distortion where you take things personally, and go to the four agreements if you want to with that one as well. And so when you're taking things personally, the ego is bruised, the pride is in play, and the pride is damaged, and then so it's like that creates the fuck you mentality. No fucking way am I gonna go and die, you dog cunt. Fucking hope you family gets burnt or some shit. It's just that you can hear the real toxic, destructive energy in that. Where if you can let go of that silly little belief that we're all born with, that I must be loved and liked, and you can shift into, we're all ignorant, we're all incompetent, we're all mediocre, we're all doing the best we can, we're all on a different life path and journey, we all have different capacities, if you can lean into that understanding and stop making it fucking about you and actually start making it about them, it changes everything. And when you genuinely wish someone well and you feel that, it's one of the greatest feelings, I think. That compassion is one of, it's just it just lights everything up.
It does. Yeah, there's a feeling of real connection there. It's like real. I can see in you what's also in me and in everyone else. Even maybe if that person, you can't see it because you're in suffering and trying to project it, I can see through it.
I wish you well. I genuinely wish you well. I wish you all the happiness in the world. I wish you can find happiness and contentment and peace. I wish you can be at peace.
Yeah.
Like it's just saying that makes me feel great.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. All right, let's leave it at that. Let's end the show feeling great.
Great. Awesome. I'm going to go and watch a Men's Mental Health Suicide roundtable discussion.
Enjoy.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, Niku. I just called you Niku.
Niku. Thank you, Rainu.
I'm just imagining like a cuckoo clock, but it's a Niku clock, and you pop out.
Niku.
You're all ignorant. You're all. You're all mediocre. It's 12 o'clock.
You're incompetent. You're incompetent. Miku. You're incompetent.
A Myndfit cuckoo clock. I can see it now.
I'm gonna jump online and try and
What
get
an
on to build one.
obscure thing to make. Anyway,
Totally.
thank you, Nico, and listeners.
I wish you peace, listeners, and Ryan. I wish you happiness. I wish you a day free of suffering.
Wow. I'm going to go and now and awaken to the true light of my nature.
Oh, get up on that bad self.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Peace out.
Peace.